From Mickey Mouse to Waterford Crystal to Bitcoin mining, even Seinfeld on Pop-Tarts. The Money Issue, this Sunday morning.
Tonight was the victim of $1 million romance scam tricked into becoming an accomplice. A CBS News investigation reveals how this could happen and why is there an effort to ban a popular screening service that cuts wait times for travelers on the CBS Evening News.
People are allowed to talk about me.
Millions of women who are enduring unbearable pain and cruelty because of Donald Trump.
If we're going to have nations believe that they can just attack one another and take over neighboring nations by virtue of their military might, why it's a very dangerous world.
Israel did not and does not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people.
Hello, I'm Ed O'Keefe, CBS News in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. It's primary day in Pennsylvania, but with the presidential nominations clinched, neither of the candidates is in the swing state. Instead, President Biden is on the campaign trail in Tampa, Florida, while former President Donald Trump once again sat in a Manhattan courtroom for testimony from former tabloid executive David Pecker and a gag order hearing.
I'd love to talk to you people. I'd love to say everything that's on my mind, but I'm restricted.
President Biden was speaking about abortion access in Tampa ahead of a new 6-week ban that takes effect in Florida next week and taking aim at his likely Republican challenger.
There's one person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump.
Let's cover the split screen in what any other way, a split screen. Robert Costa in New York, Aaron Navarro in Tampa. We'll get to Aaron in a moment. We begin with Robert, who is outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Let's begin with the gag order hearing. What exactly, Robert, did prosecutors and Trump's attorneys argue over today? And what kind of penalty could the former president face?
The prosecution argued that Trump has already violated the gag order in this case with a blizzard of social media posts that reference witnesses like his longtime lawyer, Michael Cohen. And Trump faces possible contempt of court, even some temporary incarceration and some financial penalties should the judge decide to move in that direction. But for now, it's TBD, unresolved. The judge has not yet weighed in exactly on how he's going to handle the gag order.
And we have no sense of when he'll weigh in, right?
It'll be soon.
Okay. Much of the day was about testimony from David Pecker, the former National Enquirer publisher. What to you stood out in his testimony today?
David Pecker is someone who has, for many years, been in the Donald Trump circle. He's someone who's close to the former president, going back into the 1980s, 1990s, when they were in certain circles together. But it was really in that 2015 period where he became someone who was helpful to the Trump presidential campaign. And the prosecution zoomed in on that moment in August of 2015 when the Trump campaign, Michael Cohen, Hope Hicks, Donald Trump, they met with David Pecker. And Pecker offered his services, in effect. He said he was willing to work with the National Enquirer to protect Trump's reputation, to do so-called catch-and-kill operations, to kill any story that's seen as unfavorable to Trump.
And I guess in that instance, that relationship that was established between the then businessman and the then publisher to run or publish positive stories and catch any negative stories about Trump and then publish negative stories about his rivals, what would be inherently wrong or illegal about that relationship?
Because it fell under the radar of a presidential campaign operating under federal regulations for campaign finance, for anything with a campaign needs to be fully disclosed, can't be hidden from public view, often needs to be disclosed to voters, to federal authorities. So you had, in effect, in the eyes of the prosecution, a catch-and-kill criminal conspiracy that Donald Trump used to forward his own political ambitions that was never disclosed, and that it was not only improper but illegal for Trump ultimately to pay Stormy Daniels through Michael Cohen, his lawyer, in coordination with the National Enquirer just days before the 2016 election. What we saw today from David Pecker's testimony was the building of an origin story for the prosecution, where they had him talk about his longtime relationship with Trump. So we understood as listeners, but especially those in the jury listening, understood that Pecker was someone who knew Trump. built this relationship with Michael Cohen, and ultimately it yielded this payment to Stormy Daniels. But Stormy Daniels wasn't the only instance where this relationship ended up in a so-called catch-and-kill payment. There were others that were detailed today, one to a former doorman in the Trump building, another to someone who is alleged to have had an affair with Trump. It must be said that Trump denies all wrongdoing, and he has denied these sorts of encounters and affairs.
And it's, for those that have tracked this over the last several years, I think we've heard all this. They have to establish those facts in court for that jury because it's ultimately in the hands of those 12 people. Robert Costa there in Lower Manhattan, thank you for joining us. We'll hear from you later in the week as the case continues. Now, from the courtroom in New York to a community college in Florida. President Biden was in the Sunshine State, where next week it's set to put in place some of the toughest restrictions on access to abortion services. And then this fall, voters are set to consider a ballot measure that would reverse that ban and enshrine abortion rights in the state's constitution if it passes. Aaron Navarro is following the president in Tampa. Aaron, good to see you. What did the president have to say about abortion rights in Florida today?
Ed, good to be with you. Like he has been doing, President Biden continued to tie some of the more restrictive state abortion bans to former President Trump and his role in overturning Roe v. Wade. But he also talked about and claimed that former President Trump wants a national abortion ban, and that if President Biden is president and gets something like that from a Republican-controlled Congress, he would veto it. But it's especially prevalent here in Florida, where in 1 week, a 6-week abortion ban will be enacted, making the Southeast essentially losing another state where people can get abortions up to a certain week. And you also heard President Biden kind of give action items to this issue, telling people that if they vote, they can stop it, especially interesting here in Florida, considering it's a state that the Biden campaign is looking to make a battleground.
Real quick, Aaron, one of the litmus tests on this with the president is whether he actually said the word abortion today. Did he?
He did. He said it twice, both in reference to Republican efforts for either a national abortion ban or the more restrictive abortion bans. For instance, he said Florida is going to enact one of the most anti-abortion rights laws in the country. So, yes, notable that he is saying the word in addition to the term women's reproductive health.
Right. He's been avoiding saying it explicitly, which has bothered many in his party or in his coalition. Now, the president himself is claiming now that this issue puts the state in play for his campaign, right?
Right. And it's especially an interesting claim to make, considering just how Republican Florida has turned and how Republicans here in the state have an over 800,000 voter registration advantage. But still, I talked to Congresswoman Kathy Castor, who has been representing the Tampa Bay area since 2013. She's seen a couple cycles now. I asked her about what changes this cycle to make Florida winnable for Biden. Take a listen to what she had to say.
Florida is a different state every election cycle. While it was a strong Democratic state, it trended to purple. Then it's kind of been more of a red tinge. But when you put reproductive freedom on the ballot, and you have a very distinct choice between Joe Biden, who's working for hard-working Floridians, working to lower costs, and Donald Trump, who only works for himself, that's a very stark contrast. And I anticipate it's going to go back to the old days where Florida is neck and neck.
And earlier in our chat, she referred to that ballot initiative that will be on the ballot here in Florida to essentially codify abortion up until 26 weeks. She said it was a game changer for Democrats in the state. So obviously a Florida Democrat, someone that's supporting Biden, but she believes it does change the outlook politically for Democrats here.
And as you said, someone who has seen a thing or two in Florida politics, so an important perspective to get. Aaron Navarro there in Tampa, Florida. Thank you, sir. We'll talk to you soon. In other news today, the Justice Department has reached a massive civil settlement with more than 100 people who accuse former USA Gymnastics physician Larry Nassar of sexual assault. The $138.7 million agreement will be paid to dozens who've accused the FBI of failing to properly investigate their claims of abuse. The 2021 DOJ report confirmed agents mishandled allegations against Nassar of sexual assault back in 2015. The agents were either fired or retired, and criminal charges against them were not pursued. Nassar is now serving decades in prison for assaulting female athletes, including medal-winning Olympic gymnasts. A Russia attack on Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv, today. A massive television tower breaking in half and falling to the ground. Next on America Decides, Senator Chris Murphy joins us as the Senate takes up the foreign aid package for Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan.
Mr. President, there's a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about.
Does this carrier strike group stand ready?
It's just incredible to see there's an active search and rescue operation going on 12 hours after this accident.
The CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
After months of delays, a $95 billion foreign aid package heads towards a final vote in the Senate. The legislation includes funding for Ukraine, Israel, and U.S. allies in the Indo-Pacific, as well as a forced sale or ban on the TikTok app, the seizure of frozen Russian assets, and stricter sanctions on Russia, China, and Iran. In anticipation of this package passing the Senate, CBS News has learned the Biden administration is already preparing to send the first $1 billion in weapons to Ukraine. After President Biden signs the bill, something expected later this week, 2 U.S. officials tell CBS News the weapons package is expected to include more artillery, air defense munitions, and armored vehicles. We're joined now by Democratic Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. Senator, thanks for being with us. Now, given that a first weapons package is ready to go once this legislation is passed, I wonder if you know yet how soon work starts on the next aid package for Ukraine.
Well, there's no time to waste. What we know is that right now, on an average day, Ukraine is firing about 1/5 the number of artillery shells that the Russians are. Many of their cities are defenseless because they don't have the interceptors to shoot down the incoming Russian missiles. Listen, I think this is going to be an iterative process in which we are going to get them material, ammunition, missile defense systems as quickly as we can muster those systems. Obviously, what we often do is transfer to Ukraine items that we have in our own stock, and then we use the funding to backfill our own supplies. We can't transfer weapons to Ukraine at a pace that puts our own security at risk, but we do have some of the things they need right now in U.S. stockpiles. So I think you'll see a very steady flow of U.S. munitions to Ukraine in the coming weeks, and there's enough money in this bill to make sure that that stays at a steady, high rate throughout the rest of 2024.
But do you anticipate Congress has to continue passing aid packages like this big one for the foreseeable future, that either later this year or at some point early next year you're going to have to come back to this debate?
I do, but a lot of what happens in Ukraine will be determined by the 2024 election. Let's just be frank. If Donald Trump wins, Vladimir Putin is going to believe that he has won, and he will just wait until Trump forces Ukraine to the negotiating table. If Joe Biden wins, then Putin knows that he's got a fight on his hands, and he is much more likely to come to the table and sue for peace if he knows Joe Biden's going to be building an international coalition against him for the next 4 years. So this amount of money that we're approving today gets us into the beginning of next year. And after the election, we will have a much better sense of what Putin's strategy will be in Ukraine.
You know, you guys are putting the finishing touches on something the House passed after you guys had done it first. And it seems that only like 3 or 4 hours go by in the last few days before yet another glowing profile of House Speaker Mike Johnson lands, suggesting that he's done a great, brave thing here by getting this through the House. I'm curious if you agree with several Democrats now who are calling him a statesman and a, bipartisan leader, or if you're one of those that thinks this should have been done months ago. Why did it take so long?
I mean, he did the right thing. I mean, he tried every wrong thing before he did the right thing, but I think it's okay to pat the speaker on the back for delivering aid to Ukraine before it was too late. I mean, this is still a guy who is doing Donald Trump's duty in the House, who is undermining democracy, who is trying to rob from women the ability to access full reproductive health care. But yeah, listen, politics is not a, A or B game. The speaker did something good, and that doesn't mean that he's a good speaker.
Fair enough. In our remaining moments, I'm curious, initially this whole debate included a bipartisan immigration and border security plan that you helped negotiate in the Senate that was later blocked by Republicans. Do you get any sense there's hope of reviving those negotiations over a border security deal before the election?
No. Republicans have 100% made up their mind that they don't want to fix the border. We gave them a very tough border security package negotiated with a hardline Republican senator on immigration, James Lankford of Oklahoma, and Republicans walked away from it because they actually want the border to be a mess. They want Donald Trump to be able to complain about the border this election. So there's no hope for any border or immigration reform because Republicans don't want it. Ultimately, voters are going to have to decide. Do they support a Democratic Party who supports a proposal to actually bring order to the southwest border, or do they support a Republican Party that is interested predominantly in using immigration as a political wedge? I'm proud of the bipartisan bill we did. I'm thankful to Senator McConnell and Senator Lankford, who did the right thing and came to the table, but ultimately Republicans have decided for the time being they don't want to solve this problem.
All right. Well, we'll see how the election goes, and then we'll take it up from there. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut, thank you for taking some time on a busy day there in the Senate. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
One other notable development from Capitol Hill, former President Donald Trump defending House Speaker Mike Johnson as he faced his attempts to oust him from his job. Here's what the former president had to say about Johnson in a radio interview on Monday.
We have a majority of one. Okay. So it's not like he can go and do whatever he wants to do. I think he's a very good person. It's a tough situation when you have one. I think he's a very good man. I think he's trying very hard.
Two other House Republicans have joined Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene in openly calling for Johnson's removal. Greene filed a resolution to oust him last month after the House passed that $95 billion foreign aid package. Greene said Johnson will be vacated from the top House job if he doesn't resign. It's day 6 of former President Donald Trump's hush money trial. We're going to go beyond the bench to dig deeper into the case and the legal maneuvers being made on both sides of the courtroom. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
faces, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning. Here comes the sun. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are now 6 days into the historic criminal trial of former President Donald Trump, and already there is a lot to unpack. So to help us do some of that is Daniel Horwitz, a former Manhattan Assistant District Attorney who's prosecuted several complex white-collar crimes. Daniel, thank you for spending some time with us here. Let's start by talking about Judge Merchan, who's currently overseeing this case and weighing whether or not Trump has already violated a gag order imposed on him. Based on your experience in New York courtrooms, any sense how the judge might rule?
Well, based on the hearing today, I don't think it's going in a great direction for the defendant, that's for sure. I think he was very unsatisfied with the answers he got from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche. And it would certainly seem that he's got something in mind. What that is, I don't know, but I think it's fair to say that he's not going to come out of the box with the heaviest sanction he could. There's going to be a continuum of sanctions, which start probably on the lower end with perhaps even, a very strong admonishment or questions directly to the president, asking him, Mr. President, tell me why I shouldn't hold you in contempt, because here's what I'm seeing, and making him answer questions that will be uncomfortable for him to respond to, and making it quite clear that he being Judge Merchan, is going to rule that courtroom with an iron fist and a lace glove.
Well, let's put it this way. Have you ever heard of someone in that New York courthouse being thrown in jail for violating a gag order?
No, but I mean...
So it's more likely to be a monetary fine of some kind or an admonishment.
Of course. I mean, but let me say this, that there are extraordinarily rare circumstances where a judge first of all, is going to hold any defendant in contempt, let alone putting them in, if you would, meaning that letting them sit in the jail cell behind the courthouse for a few hours to cool off. It does happen, but it's extremely rare.
I want to play you a piece of something the former president had to say today, because he's repeatedly complained about the temperature of the courtroom. Take a listen.
And they're keeping me in a courtroom that's freezing, by the way, in a courtroom all day long.
All day long, he says it's been cold in there, and he's been sitting straight up. Talk to us a little bit about that building and the extent to which the venue can affect a defendant's mood.
Well, let's just say on the positive, it's a very interesting building. It was designed by the same architects that designed Rockefeller Center. That having been said, it's 80 years old, and its heating and cooling systems are about that old. It can be extremely hot in that courtroom. It could be extremely cold. And by the way, he shouldn't feel singled out, because all the lawyers, the judges, and guess what? Guess who else? The jurors are experiencing that as well. So it is not ideal in terms of its physical plant, but on the other hand, you are on trial in a criminal case. One would think that you're going to overcome whatever temporary uncomfortableness you're going to have with your environment, and you're going to focus and pay attention because your life's on the line here.
Yeah, so designed by the same guys that did Rockefeller Center, but not renovated by the Comcast company that now owns that building up the street in Midtown. All right, Daniel Horwitz, thank you for your perspective. We'll talk to you again as the trial continues. Take care. In the race for the White House, author and activist Cornel West's presidential campaign says it's gained access to the ballot in Colorado. Campaigns claiming they did so through the Unity Party of Colorado. They also say they've gained ballot access in Alaska, Oregon, South Carolina, and Utah. West, who originally jumped into the race with the Green Party, is now running as an independent.
6 months after President Biden requested it, 2 months after the Senate passed it, I'm just frankly relieved and grateful that we are finally here.
The Senate finally gets its hands on the foreign aid bill. We're live on Capitol Hill as lawmakers get set to send it to the president's desk. You're streaming America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go. You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. It's the clock. It's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back. We are watching the Senate tonight as lawmakers prepare to give final approval to a $95 billion aid package that provides assistance to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Our Nicole Killian's on Capitol Hill following the latest for us. Nicole, great to see you. How easily is this aid package now expected to pass? And is there any sign of dissent at this point in the Senate?
Well, there are some senators who are opposed to this package, but by and large, we saw in a procedural vote earlier today that senators overwhelmingly voted to advance this legislation, which really kind of puts it on a glide path to final passage, so much so that Leader Schumer and Leader McConnell were almost taking victory laps, in terms of patting each other on the back for working in a bipartisan fashion to move this legislation forward. And considering the Senate passed a similar measure just a few weeks ago, there isn't really much different to this package that they are now taking up. So we do expect it to clear final passage in the next few hours, if not by tomorrow.
In congressional reporting speak, glide path is a word we like to use because it means things will be buttoned up by dinner time, at least tomorrow. A big part of this bill, Nicole, as you know, has to do with TikTok. In essence, forcing the company to be divested by the Chinese firm ByteDance or have it be banned across the United States. You talked to a TikTok influencer today about that potential ban. What did she have to tell you?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, keep in mind that this is an added provision beyond what the Senate passed earlier, and that the Senate has really had some pretty drawn-out debate over how to proceed over this issue of TikTok, although it does seem like some senators are on board with this legislation now. As you mentioned, I did speak with a creator who came up to Capitol Hill hoping to try to convince senators to vote against this package. Take a listen to what she told me about the potential impact on her small business.
What will this mean for your business?
It would be devastating for my business. Again, 98% of my sales come because people find me on TikTok. This past August, we sold more in 9 days on TikTok Shop than we did all of last year combined. I can't replicate that on the other platforms. We've tried.
So she drove all the way from Columbia, South Carolina to be here. And TikTok, furthermore, is now threatening potential illegal action, saying we will move to the courts for a legal challenge once this bill is potentially signed. So that is potentially the next step on the part of TikTok. That is according to an internal company memo that CBS News has obtained. And in terms of this influencer we talked about, she was very concerned that this was kind of tucked into this foreign aid package. She felt it was kind of sneaky on the part of lawmakers and feels that if the concerns are about privacy issues, that they should take that issue up separately rather than trying to force a divestiture or ban of TikTok outright.
All right, Nicole Killian on Capitol Hill. We will watch passage of that bill, then we'll watch the legal fight that probably will unfold, but we appreciate it for now. Now here in studio, let's bring in Ashley Etienne and Maura Gillespie. Ashley previously served as communications director for Vice President Harris. Maura was an advisor to House Speaker John Boehner and Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Good to see you both. Let's start first with this bill. I thought Republicans didn't like this thing, Maura. Why did they suddenly all come home?
Because it's a better situation for them to have this passed, one, broken up into pieces individually for the House. That was a smart strategic move by Speaker Johnson. But largely, this doesn't involve border security, so they, can continue to complain about the lack of border security funding and kind of do Donald Trump's bidding in that effort.
in essence, the issue is still there, so everyone can still campaign on
It's a win for them.
border
Yeah,
security.
absolutely.
I mean, I like to believe that Speaker Johnson got religion, that he somehow became very fully aware of the implications of not passing these bills is having on our allies around the world. And it's really exacerbating the problems from Israel to Ukraine. So, I mean, I like to believe that, there was a little politics there, but mostly putting the interests of the country ahead of the party's
I completely agree. I think Johnson absolutely realized, seeing some of the briefing documents and getting some of those things that we're not even privy to, intelligence briefings. I think he chose to do the right thing for the right reasons. And as my old boss would say, the right things will happen. And in that effort, fantastic. But for some of his members, especially in the Senate, who were kind of touting, saying they would never pass Ukraine aid, they also now have come on board because I think they in part have seen that this is a good strategic messaging effort for them.
Yeah. If anything, if he didn't get religion, he at least got a classified briefing or two that scared him into doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One other thing the speaker's now doing, apparently, is going to Columbia University tomorrow to call attention to the concerns about anti-Semitism on that campus and on campuses nationwide. This continues to be a congressional concern. Where does this issue go next? And what are the politics of this? This could be a little tricky.
I agree. I mean, I think this is going to be a tough one for Johnson. And I was surprised by how quickly this was just announced, given what's happening in Columbia, at Columbia, but other schools, obviously, in the area as well. I'm alarmed by it just as a citizen and just watching it from the outside in. I'm alarmed by it. I also think in messaging for tomorrow, I'll be curious to hear if Speaker Johnson talks about student loans and the forgiveness and talking about privileged students who are out there saying, death to some, not all, but saying death to America, and then also asking for forgiveness of their student loans. It's not going to sit well with the American people.
Way to talk about it, yeah. And this is a tricky one for Democrats, too.
No, I mean, this is the issue that continues to dog the president. I mean, the challenge here is that it's an issue where he and Netanyahu's interests are conflicting, and it's a situation where he has absolutely no control over it. He lost upwards of 200,000 votes uncommitted during the primaries in places like Michigan. I'm hearing on the ground those people are not going to come back to the party. They're not going to vote for Joe Biden. So this is an issue that continues to dog the president, and it's one in which there's no easy solve for. There's no easy fix for this one. I mean, the good thing is that aid is now going and going to hit the ground. So hopefully that will let some pressure out of the valve. But the reality is this is an issue that's going to continue to dog the president.
I want you to take a listen to something the president had to say today in Florida, if we can run that, please.
Next week, one of the nation's most extreme anti-abortion laws will take effect here in Florida. Don't think he's making a deal right now with MAGA extremists to ban nationwide abortion in every single state, because he's making it. In fact, the MAGA majority in the House of Representatives has introduced three separate bans to ban choice nationwide in every single state, based on each state. These bills have overwhelming support of Republicans in Congress. But know this, as long as I have the power of the presidency, it's never going to happen.
Twice there, he said the A word.
Yes.
He's now saying
the
word
of Joe
abortion.
Biden on this issue, right? The evolution.
Remind the viewers why this is kind of a big deal.
Well, I mean,
and why he needs to say it in the eyes of Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden's been a lifelong Catholic. I mean, I think he goes to Mass every Sunday, as he said. And so the problem has been, and I saw this from the inside, where you had, this young woman, former AG, from California, that was further left than her boss on this issue.
President.
Absolutely. So how do you reconcile these two positions? Well, it looks like the president's gotten smart on the issue and is realizing that this is not just a winner for the Democratic Party, but is a critical issue for women all over the country, not just Democratic women, but we've seen moderate women that have flipped Kansas, Ohio. This is the gift that will keep giving for Democrats, no doubt, going into the election.
Are Republicans sounding alarm bells yet down in Florida, concerned that this thing could pass and potentially lift other Democrats on the ballot?
Probably not in Florida, but elsewhere in the country, it's absolutely a problem for Republicans. We have long struggled on this issue, and we will continue to do so if we are encouraging bans like this. And again, I, as a Catholic, I don't know who decided you have to be pro-life and pro-choice. I believe you can be two things at once. You can believe in the sanctity of life, but also respect half the population's medical freedom. And I think Joe Biden's using the term abortion here is an interesting choice for him, definitely a winning choice for him as far as Democrats go. I always appreciated him talking about it as far as women's reproductive rights. I appreciated that. But again, I think that this is an issue where Republicans aren't looking holistically at how they're going to even help women that they are subjecting these kind of bans onto. There's no protocols in place to say, okay, well, you have to have this child, but here's some support for that child, or here's some support for your health care.
Right.
There's nothing there.
And Democrats have always said that about Republicans. You could be pro-life when the baby's in the stomach, but when the baby comes out, you're split and run. You know what I mean? You don't provide them any sort of aid and support, to your point.
Yeah.
So, but this is, I think, this is, again, we've seen Gavin Newsom that's now up with ads all over the place. He's had billboard in 7 states that have. So this is an issue that the entirety of the Democratic apparatus is going to be leaning in on, because it draws this nice contrast between where Republicans are, Donald Trump is, and where Democrats are. Freedoms, democracy for all, free choice versus Republicans. Snatch and grab,
and I had a conversation with someone this morning who points out that because in Florida, the passage of that ballot measure requires 60% approval of the voters, it's going to have to be a more nonpartisan or bipartisan argument made than in places like Arizona, where Democrats can just lean into it and get as many Democrats to vote it and get it over the finish line on the majority vote. We'll be talking a lot about this over the next several months.
No doubts.
Morgan Gillespie, Ashley Etienne, great to see both of you. Expelled New York Congressman George Santos, remember him? Well, he has suspended his campaign to reclaim a seat in the House. Santos posted on social media Tuesday that he's dropping out of the race because he said he doesn't want to split the ticket and cause a Democrat to win. Santos was running as an independent for New York's 1st congressional district after previously serving in the state's 3rd district. The former congressman has been indicted on multiple charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and identity theft. He's pleaded not guilty to all counts. Plotting his political future, could Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra be ready to go home and run for California governor? We're in the neighboring state of Arizona as he visits that state to promote abortion access. Stay with us. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now, we got something crazy.
And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking,
Welcome to the idea of being a human being.
innovative, and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
On 1-hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
At the CBS Evening News, we focus on solutions, finding solutions to healthcare problems, how much money we can spend on the groceries, finding solutions to help people understand what are the right choices to make for you and your family.
Welcome back to America Decides. Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra spoke in Arizona today about reproductive rights. His comments come, however, as there's speculation about his political future. Politico reports he's had multiple conversations over the past few weeks about mounting a bid for governor of California when that job comes up again in 2026. Becerra previously served as the state's attorney general and a congressman from the Los Angeles area. CBS News' Shana Mizell joins us now from Phoenix. Shana, great to see you. You asked Becerra today about a possible bid for California governor. What do you have to say?
Ed, good evening. Great to be here with you. Becerra stopped by a Planned Parenthood here in Phoenix, Arizona today, but I asked him about those Politico reports and straight up if he plans or wants to be governor. Here's what he had to say. Do you want to be governor of California?
So we're in Arizona. We just made a really important announcement about privacy interests. I'm going to focus on that and simply tell you that it is great to see that the people of Arizona are taking action.
So the secretary here today sidestepping the question when asked directly if he wants to be governor of California. He really sought to focus on what he was here in Phoenix to talk about today, which was a new HHS policy that was unveiled just this week that seeks to really strengthen privacy protections for patients.
Shana Mizell, straight up asking the question, and let the record reflect again that the secretary didn't say no when you asked whether he'd like to be governor of California. We appreciate it there in Phoenix, Arizona for us tonight. Thank you. The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments tomorrow in a key case that involves abortion rights. The disputes over the clash between Idaho's near total ban and a federal law that requires Medicare participating hospitals to provide emergency abortion care to women whose health is at serious risk. Health policy reporter for the Associated Press, Amanda Seitz, joins us now. She wrote an article, an incredible article about how emergency rooms across the United States are refusing to treat pregnant women. One of these, this just stuck with me here. This woman you spoke with, health law and policy professor, says pregnant patients have, quote, become radioactive to emergency departments, unquote, in states with extreme abortion restrictions. They're so scared of a pregnant patient that the emergency medicine staff won't even look. They just want these people gone. That's how urgent it is for women and how concerned hospitals are in these states about the potential legal risk.
Yeah, and what we found, we were able to get back some federal records, complaints, pregnancy-related complaints against hospitals, is that the severity and the number of complaints really went up after states started enacting these abortion bans. And we found cases where medical staff wouldn't look at these pregnant patients when they walked in. They were asking for help, and they were turned away and told to drive elsewhere in some cases.
Do we get a sense that the doctors, the front desk staffs at these places are being told by somebody in the back room, just for the sake of our legal risk, avoid these at all costs? Or are they personally concerned, given the changes in law, that they could get swept up into something they don't want to be involved in?
Well, unfortunately, the documents don't tell us the motives necessarily that some of these doctors or medical staff had in turning away the patients. But what we do know is that there was a lot of confusion swirling for doctors once these abortion bans were enacted, and that there continues to be some confusion and difficulties in treating these patients when they do present at ERs. Some of the doctors in Idaho have said that they've had to actually airlift patients out of the state to get care because of a new abortion ban that started in January. They've had several instances of that.
So there's going to be a lot of conversation at the High Court tomorrow about something known as EMTALA, E-M-T-A-L-A. What is that? And how is it potentially being used by the Biden administration to penalize these hospitals that aren't treating women?
So EMTALA is the federal law that requires that every patient that presents in an emergency room get a medical screening exam. And if the hospital is not able to provide resources or services to them, that they at least stabilize that patient before transferring them out. And the Biden administration has argued that Idaho's state ban, state abortion ban, which does not allow an exemption for the health of the mother, is in direct conflict with the federal law that requires these emergency rooms to treat patients in medical emergencies.
Right. They don't have the health exception. They have only a life exception in Idaho. And then Idaho is arguing, well, this same law says we also have to account for the life of the baby. Therefore, that's why we are perhaps seeing hospitals make this not weird decision, but this difficult decision to figure out what exactly to do about a situation like that.
That's correct. The federal law actually does mention unborn children and that doctors are required to treat them as well. So it's a real conundrum that we'll hear. In reading your report, which I urge our viewers to go find, I get a sense that HHS, the Health and Human Services Department, is a little reluctant to really penalize and press these hospitals unless or until the Supreme Court rules on this, right? Is that part of this? Well, it takes a really long time.
But why? That's what I don't understand, too. I mean, if you're not treating someone and there's a potential financial penalty, it should be pretty cut and dry. You ask the hospital why they didn't do it. You issue the fine if they didn't, right?
Yeah, and it still takes years for the federal government to determine these fines, and they don't publicly release these complaints either. You have to fight to get those as well.
And that could be a fine of what, 5 figures, 6 figures, depending on the case?
They're hefty fines, and hospitals also are at risk for losing their Medicare funding if they violate EMTALA, which is, how a lot of hospitals make a lot of money. And so it's a real big threat to them to not follow this law. But as we've seen, it's also a real big threat to these doctors who might face criminal penalties if they do perform an abortion in some of these states.
Let alone a threat to the life of the women who walk in seeking the help and at least allegedly, aren't getting it. Amanda Seitz, incredible reporting, an important subject, and a really important case to watch at the Supreme Court tomorrow. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Ed.
President Biden and former President Trump may not be in Pennsylvania this primary day, but we are. We'll take a closer look at what's on the ballot in the Keystone State. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis?
You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean?
What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education. Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, you know, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. It's primary day in the swing state of Pennsylvania. We have reporters across the Keystone State covering the races to watch.
I'm Zach Hudak. I'm in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, covering the primary race for the state's 10th congressional district. That's a seat that's currently held by Scott Perry, a close ally of President Trump and someone who was involved intimately in some of the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. There are 5 Democrats here in this district running just for the chance to take on Perry come November. I'm also keeping a close watch on Pennsylvania's 12th district. That's the area around Pittsburgh, a seat currently held by Summer Lee. She's the first member of the squad to come up for a primary. And we're watching that in large part to see the effect of her opposition to some of the Israel aid packages that have been passed, how that affects her in this race.
Hi, I'm John Delano, KDKA TV. We're outside the Renaissance Hotel here in Pittsburgh, where Congresswoman Summer Lee hopes to celebrate a victory later tonight in today's Pennsylvania primary. Who is Summer Lee? Well, she's the first African-American woman elected to the U.S. House from Pennsylvania, and she clearly identifies with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. She frequently votes with the Squad and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she is somebody who makes no apologies for being quite liberal in this community. She's being opposed by Bhavani Patel, a 30-year-old daughter of Indian immigrants to America. Who is Bhavani Patel? Well, again, she's someone who's more moderate, she says. She says she supports President Biden and Israel, which has become one of the issues in this campaign because Summer Lee has been a strong supporter of Palestinians in this election and throughout the past year. Who's going to win? Well, it looks like Summer Lee has the most support, certainly from political action committees. There are 8 of them that have spent money in this campaign. There's been one political action committee helping Patel, largely funded, frankly, by a Republican billionaire in Pennsylvania. So we'll see later tonight who's the winner. Odds still favor Congressman Summer Lee winning renomination here in Pennsylvania. At the Renaissance Hotel in downtown Pittsburgh, I'm John Delano, KDKA TV News.
Zach Hudak and John Delano, thank you. New Federal Election Commission filings are giving insight into how much money the Biden and Trump campaigns have on hand. We're also learning how much money is being spent on the former president's legal bills. The CBS News analysis finds that 2 PACs have spent more than $65 million on Trump's legal defense since January 2023. CBS News political reporter Hunter Woodall is here to look at the numbers. Hunter, good to see you. How much exactly did each campaign bring in last month?
Well, Ed, it's fascinating. You know, former President Donald Trump may be up in the polls in so many states, but he's facing a struggle when it comes to campaign fundraising. When you look at former President Joe Biden, checking the numbers here, President Joe Biden's main campaign brought in $43.8 million last month, according to campaign finance records. Donald Trump, $15.3.
That's it.
That's it, and that's a large gulf. Now, these are just the 2 main campaign accounts, but when you look at the struggles the former president's having, this is a major one because not only is President Biden, fundraising far more than former President Trump right now, he's also spending more. And it looks like in March, these records show Biden's campaign spent more than $25 million more than Trump last month. That's a large gulf.
And it's on advertising, on staffing, on traveling the president across the country at a time when the former president's worried primarily about his legal future. Talk to us about what his legal bills look like.
Absolutely. You know, my colleague Jay Rosen did great work breaking down that number of that, you know, more than $65 million spent by these two political action committees about, you know, on the former president's legal defense. That's a large gulf of money. Now, that's separate from the figures we just talked about, but that's a big drain on campaign money that could be used to help Trump's chances in the election. And, you know, these legal challenges are not going away. They're still growing. Obviously, we see the former president in court this week. These challenges are ongoing. You know, there's several different cases, and they're not going away anytime soon.
It is incredible to think $65 million so far, and only this week did he start sitting in a courtroom for actual proceedings. Let's see. Hunter Woodall, great to be with you and have you share that information. Thank you. And before we go, it turns out George Washington may have indeed cut down that cherry tree after all. Archaeologists working at the Mount Vernon estate unearthed 2 intact bottles of cherries in the basement of the former president's mansion. Experts say the bottles were buried more than 250 years ago and have been preserved ever since. One of the archaeologists even said it smelled like cherry blossoms when they excavated the bottles. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for April 23rd, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. In Ukraine, soldiers ration bullets, just 10 a day as stockpiles dwindle and Russian bomb attacks don't. Pleas for help from Congress have gone unanswered, but